in my background.
Oh, are we in the same place? Oh,
I don't know. Maybe.
Carolina.
Nice out there, huh?
Yeah, Chicago is it's warming up really nice this time of year.
Good. Spring has sprung.
So what you been working on, Dianne? You were at a couple conferences. What's going on?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago I was in Seattle. First time in that city. It was for the International Congress on Integrative Medicine. I did a workshop for them, doing some neurofeedback demos, as well as I have a colleague and a customer who does like ancient techniques, indigenous tools to kind of process things, right? So we do the neuro part, and then she does these different tools to help people just flush out and process what's happening. So it's a pretty powerful combination. We do like an intensive event together once a year. So yeah, did that. But then I picked up the thing, whatever the respiratory thing is.
Yeah.
So I lost the week after that with a fever fighting that off, which
RSV or whatever. Who knows?
Yeah, what every 3 or 4 years I get something and it'll nail me hard. But that I'm just recuperating from that. So that kind of took a little bit out of my schedule. But yeah.
So what was everybody asking about out there?
It was interesting. It was very hands-on. So they were curious, just trying to understand what the neurofeedback was doing, and I had some really mobile devices there, a ball cap with a sensor in it and a headset, really what we use, at a lot of our at-home and remote work. So it was a combination of them just trying to understand what am I trying to do, or what is it doing, and what's happening. So I'm trying to field those kind of questions while I'm trying to, basically explain to 40 some people what the whole process is, so.
Hey, Dr. Marie, welcome.
Hey. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is.
Hello there.
Dianne was telling us about the conference she was at. Where was it at, Dianne?
It was in Seattle, Washington. It was the International Congress on Integrative Medicine and Wellness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really good, open-minded group. They take traditional medical approaches, but they're bringing in all of the other things that make sense, that work. So,
what were a majority of the questions on? ADHD?
It wasn't really condition specific. They were trying to understand the process. What was the technology doing? What am I supposed to be doing while this thing is on my head? The basic questions, like how is it teaching my brain something different?
Isn't it the hardest part that they have to figure out that they don't have to do anything?
I know. I'm like, just sit back and relax. When you can see it better, your brain's doing what we want. And when you can't see it as well, your brain is not. Just relax, let your brain do the work. So,
what was the biggest aha moment?
My biggest aha moment was that like 80 people signed up for this workshop, and I didn't know what to expect.
Cha-ching? Pay for the plane flight?
Maybe it will. But we were pleasantly surprised that there was enough interest in that group, because it was a lot of academia. It was a lot of universities and, and we didn't really know what to expect. And I loved the openness and the collaborative spirit of the group to even consider, energy work and neurofeedback and embrace it enough that they really showed a very solid interest in it. So, yeah.
Hey, Jay, Dianne was just in Seattle. She's telling us about the conference she was at. 80 people. Cha-ching, baby.
Yeah, and it was the tail end of the day. It was the very last thing at like 7 p.m. after they were in workshops all day long, but they were really open. So it was good.
What is the format do you do? Do you call somebody up and you put the sensors on and do it, or you do a pre-recorded thing? Like, what's the format?
Well, this was unexpected. We walked into a room. There was no AV. Usually I have some slides to give some visuals and explain things. But in this case, it was really supposed to be a hands-on thing. So I had 3 demo systems set up in pretty much the front of the room. There weren't like chairs lined up. So people were either going to sit on the floor or pull up a couple chairs that were on the edges. And they were watching the people that I set up on the 3 devices and, asking questions as the people were sitting there doing a neurofeedback session. Yeah. And then my colleague did the energy work exercise of just trying to change your level of consciousness from like the literal level to then the next level up above that, where you're looking at the bigger picture, to the way up above, like spiritual kind of, level. So she walked them through that exercise, which was very interesting. Yeah. And they were open. Yeah.
Jay, how you been?
Staying busy for an old retired guy, So.
Yeah, you're retired. You're working from sun up to sundown.
Yeah, I'm going towards an eye surgery on the eye that's left.
Oh, that's right.
So that's a little concerning because I don't really heal from things, but eye surgery is pretty routine. I hope it goes easily. It's just cataract surgery, for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
My doctor has done 11,000 of them,
Oh,
nice.
And he said that proudly, and I said, well, I counted until the 1990s at 500,000 EEGs, and he went, "Oh my God!"
So, don't compare to your standard there, Jay.
Well, different. Surgery versus reading an EEG is a whole different level. So
yeah. Okay.
So
he went to the University of Minnesota. So
nice.
Yeah.
I've had a couple people in my circle lately that have had the eye surgery. It must be the LASIK surgery, where literally like they had worn glasses since they were 5 years old and now they don't require them. And so they're having really great success with the advancements in eye surgeries. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I remain envious. Don't have the right eye for it.
Cataract surgery used to be just a clear lens, and that was your option, a clear lens. And then whatever your vision was, you would get glasses to correct for your vision. But now they have lenses that give you the correction. They can correct astigmatism with the lens that they put in. They can give you nearsighted correction, farsighted correction. So they said, "What do you want?" I said, "Clear." And they said, "Well, don't you want to see things far away?" I said, "I can't drive. What do I need to see far away for? If I can see the computer screen, I'm fine." So.
Well, question, since we have some people that are watching the show, please ask the questions, or I have to ask the questions. Oh
my God! Quick, call in.
Can you do something with in the back? The occipital is back there, right? Controls vision. Is there anything can you tweak anything with neurofeedback to make you see better?
Well, subjectively, we've had a lot of people come in for other things, and they just casually report that colors are a little bit brighter and they hear a little bit better. But that's just, I think, one of the quote unquote side effects of brain brightening. It's not universal. It does coincidentally, perhaps not. It tends to be individuals who are a little bit older. I think we're just sparking things. But Jay, is there anything absolutely specific that you target for that?
In fact, speeding up the background alpha gives you a slightly higher resolution. And that's the brighter color, sharper, better memory. Semantic and declarative memory is predicted by your alpha frequency. Slow alpha, poor performance; faster alpha, better performance. And that was a great correlational study when they did it. But then I invited Wolfgang Klemisch to the U.S. to a meeting. He couldn't come. He sent Michael Doppelmayr. We exposed him to the virus of neurofeedback, and he went and infected the lab with this idea that you could change the brainwaves frequency with training. So that he flew back to Frankfurt, and Wolfgang Klemisch picked him up and drove back to Salzburg, the Consciousness and Sleep Laboratory. And it's a world-class laboratory, one of those top research laboratories worldwide, and regardless of what you're studying. And so they said, in the 3-hour drive, basically, they came up with multiple years worth of studies that they could do manipulating the EEG frequencies, because a lot of their work was identifying, slower alpha versus faster alpha. So they took a bunch of the people that had slow alpha and did individual alpha frequency +1, IAF +1. And whatever. If you had an 8, they would try to make a 9. If you had a 7, they try and make an 8. They just try to make you 1 cycle a second faster. And sure enough, the semantic and declarative memory was dramatically enhanced. So it's not a correlation. There's causally related. The alpha frequency and resolution giving you better memory performance. So. But there's lots of kinds of memory. Episodic memory, it has to do with frontal theta. And episodic bursts of theta frontally happen with episodic memory. And that's the frontal midline theta literature. It's not excess theta that's up front in ADD. These are brief bursts that come up with a memory task, like toss a quadratic equation in front of somebody and, oh my God, wow, oh yeah, I remember how to solve that. So you got to recall something episodically, and they'll see that burst of alpha during that episodic recall. And the nucleus accumbens, which is part of the reinforcement network, provides acetylcholine to the temporal lobe limbic structures so they can be rhythmic and have memory. If your hippocampus and amygdala aren't rhythmic, they're not functioning. Like the alpha not being produced when acetylcholine is not present in the thalamus. If acetylcholine is not in the temporal structures, you're not rhythmic there. So this little tiny nuclear body that has to do with pleasure, unpleasure, and reinforcement, just underneath the front of the anterior cingulate, fires up to provide memory, episodic recall. And you see a little flash of it at the anterior cingulate. You can't see the nucleus accumbens itself, but you see it reflected in the anterior cingulate. So you don't need to see it when you see the network it's fired into.
Jay, you brought up memory and something.
No, you brought up memory. I remember you brought it up.
I don't remember who brought it.
I don't remember that. I saw something from 2010 on 60 Minutes about memory, and I forgot what it was called. But when somebody you give them a date, and they can go back 30 years in time and say exactly what happened on that date. What is that?
That's a savant.
Yeah.
It's not. Hey, Sky, our co-host here.
How you been, Sky?
It's actually not that uncommon in divergent individuals to have a savant skill set.
Yeah.
And my business partner told me I'm an EG savant, like an idiot savant, So, but it's
okay. What is a savant then?
Just a unique skill set that you have. It could be mathematical, numeric. Cynthia Kerson's brother, who's a special skill set, knows if he sees a plane flying over, he'll tell you what flight it is and where it's going. He knows all the airlines and the routes and everything going in and out of San Francisco. So that, who the hell knows that? And if you know it, you know it. So but he's not terribly functional in a lot of other ways. So
wait a minute, I can't find my car keys. How can somebody say in 1998, on February 2nd, I was at a McDonald's drive-thru and I ordered a milkshake? How where is that being stored?
In fact, memory is not stored anywhere; it's stored everywhere. They have searched for the engram. They looked here, they look there, they poke around, they can't find where memory is. And they find sometimes if you take a little bit at a time, the memory doesn't go away, but it gets less well resolved until you've eaten up the whole area of the brain. So, they were having a hell of a time figuring it out until Carl Pribram came with the idea of the holonomic or holographic memory. And it's an interference pattern. You take a glass plate and you can print a hologram image in it. but you can print 1,000 images in it. You retrieve it with a different frequency and a different angle of the retrieval beam, and you get a different image. So there's no capacity problem, and it's stored as an interference pattern that does not have an edge. So memories can be shared, archetypal memory as an example of that. And some people kind of are a little bit more connected with others than others. So the ability to kind of feel with or empathize and actually sync with somebody is a unique skill set.
Also, what we prune, I mean, in terms of what one individual finds is a relevant pairing versus not, you know, so the date for many individuals, the date that you wore a pink shirt is not relevant unless it was somebody's birthday or something emotional or what have you within that. So I think that's what Pete was going at. Like, why do some people pair what we believe is irrelevant pairings or irrelevant information? So, yeah. Is Pete gone hiding?
His audio is gone now.
Lost your audio. Oh no, Pete can't talk.
Thank God PNQ showed up. We got a question here. Do you think that there's a turning point for the neurofeedback to play a larger role in the larger mental health community? I would say yes. What say you?
I want to say yes.
Yeah.
I believe there needs to be. For sure.
It's happening. I mean, it's slower and faster.
I have a bit of perspective, you know. I've been in the field 52 years. And when I started, there was no efficacy literature for anything. Everything we did was experimental. We built the science that we stand on one piece at a time. And we actually have a pretty damn solid foundation of solid neuroscience underlying neurofeedback and many of its clinical applications and the underlying technique itself and its ability to modulate the EEG. So it's a very plastic system, and plastic's got a nasty name lately, but you know, plasticity is reformability, changeability, not a petrochemical waste product. So neuroplasticity is a good thing. So.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest thing that neurofeedback could do for the mental health community to show how drugs interact? What do you think?
Well, if everybody's silent, I'll jump in. I think it's just the ability to change a base state for the better. And we can even go into a trait. So individuals who are a little bit too aroused, to prevent that from flipping into anxiety, or if you already are anxious, helping to dial that down. Same principle in terms of focus. You know, individuals who are a little too focused, be able to turn that dial down again to reduce the anxiety. Similarly, if you have focus issues, to dial it up. You know, depression, the frontal lobe, same thing, just a little bit imbalance towards depression or towards downstate, just to be able to have more power over that dial. I think that is the big picture. Yeah. And of course, we can talk about specific or heavy duty mental illness, but I also think just in terms of, you know, whether we call it peak emotional performance or just the ability to be a little bit better self without all the pharmacology. I think that's the beauty of it.
I think that's huge. And then also, you know, there is sort of that movement and that push to remove the stigma and the labels and like, you know, this spectrum is okay. You're just different. And, you know, the acceptance aspect of it. And if we just all realize and we take a look at our EEG activity and our brain maps, there is no perfect brain. It's all okay. But we can work with what we have and we can improve that. And, you know, and so I think that it could lend in helping remove the stigma and the shame if it's something we just all participate in, right?
Yeah. I want to throw one back though, Dianne. You know, we're not seeing the stigma and the shame. Almost it's like a full pendulum swing, especially within certain population, shall we say, where it's cool to have anxiety, it's cool to have OCD. So I don't know. I think it's a really good one to keep the dialogue up on. And I blame that all on social media, whether we want to just say it's YouTube, I don't know, or TikTok. But the people actually are diagnosing themselves, and I think the pendulum has gone a little bit too far. That's kind of why I was talking a little bit about tweaking. Just because you're having a down day doesn't mean you're depressed. Or just because you're a little bit too aroused one day doesn't mean you have anxiety. And I think as people who work within this space, to just keep that dialogue open about, it's cool to have a bad day. And there's nothing wrong with having depression. Just staying in that middle there.
Yeah.
What are some new exciting developments in the mental health space besides neurofeedback? How do you compare TDCS, TACS with neurofeedback, given that these devices are more affordable nowadays?
Affordable and powerful.
Yeah.
And in the hands of somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, dangerous.
Yes. Yeah.
And dangerous meaning you can trigger somebody in a way that isn't a healthy way. They may have an underlying epilepsy that you don't know because you haven't looked at the EEG, and you activate the source and they have their first ever seizure. You may trigger the anterior cingulate and they may have an obsession or a compulsion that you've now triggered. And goodness knows, compulsive behaviors include suicidality, self-injury, things like that. So you can't just poke around in there with electrode, the plus and minus of the DC stim. You can activate or inhibit cortical areas, but you need to know what you're doing and where and why, and to what. What you need to know the turf that you're playing on. So if you're working with a therapist and they're doing neurofeedback and you're doing DC stim or AC stim at home in between sessions, those are synergistic treatments that end up working really well together. But again, DC stim in the hands of somebody who does not know what they're doing, I've seen people blister their ears, so it's kind of like having yourself as your own lawyer. You got a fool for a client. Well, treat yourself with your own device. If you don't know what you're doing, if it's not your profession and you don't really understand what you're doing, you can cause great harm as well.
Yeah.
Dr. Marie, how many people have come to you and have spent a month on Google to self-diagnose themselves, and they come in and tell you to fix it?
Oh, unfortunately, it's very, very common. And it's very common with adolescents and youth. Yeah. They come in saying, I have this. And I'm like, great, let's have a look at the brain. Right. And then we kind of enter into a dialogue. And that's fine. I mean, some of it is, taking power into your own hands. The fact that they're knocking on our door or at their neurotherapist door, that tells me they want to do something about it. Okay. But the individuals who are dragged in by somebody else, like a parent, et cetera, and they have this extreme identity with the label, that's where you have to, put your psychologist or your psychotherapist hat on, and that's a different story. We were seeing that a lot with ADHD as well. I mean, we can loop in Dianne here, that the stigma associated with that was so negative. But when individuals start coming in, well, I can't do this because I have ADHD, or that's my ADHD. This is why I did this in an interpersonal relationship, that this becomes an excuse. I can't help myself. I'm impulsive. I have ADHD. So, yeah, I mean, you have to be pretty sophisticated in terms of how you interact with clients, and sometimes the family members as well. But I don't, Jay again will talk about, the DSM and the diagnosis. If somebody comes in and tells me they're depressed, I'm not going to tell them, no, you're not. I'm going to look at the brain and tell them, okay, now I understand based on what your brain is telling me why you're feeling this way. Now, this is what we can do about it. Are you interested? So be really, really careful of the labels. And ADHD, it drives me crazy because the plethora of symptoms or mannerisms or ways of doing things that people have with, again, ADHD, everything from having trouble focusing on something to not being able to sleep, right? It's pretty big.
We're so good at describing internal states. Yeah. Love, let me tell you the ways, I mean, and you read a whole damn book and you still, unless you experience, the book didn't really tell you anything. So, but depression, let me tell you the ways. I mean, that depression isn't depression. Yeah. If you have left frontal subdominance, you might have mood state problems. And that could be left frontal alpha or left frontal slow or right frontal beta, making the left side subdominant. So there's a lot of different ways to get that. But if you're subdominant left frontally, you usually have a mood, boohoo, sad, depression. But it's at the midline. You can have amotivation, lack of initiation, anhedonia, and that's depression. Yeah. Or you might have it on the right side and have agitated depression or agitation, anxiety. Yeah. So which depression is it? And it can be a mix. Sometimes I have agitation, sometimes I'm amotivated, but you can kind of start to guess which turf you're dealing with as to where the dysfunction is, but it won't tell you what the problem is there. You can finally say, oh, it's at the cingulate. Well, is it a beta pattern or an alpha pattern or a slow pattern? Could be any of those three. All you're seeing is that it's not working right. The behavior is because it's not working right. Yeah. So if it's disturbed with one or the other of the three general patterns that it fails with, it looks the same clinically. How many kinds of OCD are there in the DSM?
Yeah.
What the hell? Haven't they split that into a number of subsets by now, We see 3, and we predict medication based on it. So I think our 3 are real. I think their 1 is still kind of in their head,
Well, if you say you looked at, Asperger's was lumped into autism, the fact that they lump one thing in together for convenience and then don't get us going.
And Asperger's as a term is no longer in the DSM.
I know, that's my point, and it's pretty darn different from autism, if you ask me. Yeah. Yeah.
Which of the following have the most potential danger or benefit? Amplitude neurofeedback, infralow neurofeedback, stims?
Same response as Jay. Who is working with you? Who knows how to use the equipment here? Really, really important to know what you're doing. The subtleties of all of these things. I wouldn't say one is more or less dangerous than the other. Do either of you have a comment there?
A scalpel in the hand of the right person is a really great tool.
Yeah.
But, you could be a hack too. Yeah. Don't go to Joe's neurosurgery, $200 for the works, okay? Don't go for the low bid if you're going in for neurosurgery. Actually look for the quality of the person that's going to be doing this stuff. So
basic, if you can facilitate amplitude going up on one brainwave, you can facilitate the same one going down, and you have to make sure you have it in the right direction. True. It's like surgeon's going to amputate the wrong leg, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What is PEMF?
Yeah.
Haida, welcome aboard. Long time no see. What about PEMF?
Pulsed electromagnetic frequencies. So you take a cell phone level strength of something it's making EMF, and you pulse the EMF so that it goes on and off and pulses, and that can end up modulating tissue. Now, EMF greater than 3 milligauss is also, pardon me, potentially something that can increase likelihood of carcinogenesis. So EMF isn't always considered a good thing. Pulsed EMF as a temporary treatment is different than living under a power line. Under a good-sized power line, you've got 100, 150 milligauss, on your meter while you're standing there. And you shouldn't really have more than 2 or 3 anywhere in your house unless you're really close to a source, in which case you can identify it. And anyway, pulsed EMF is a therapeutic application of EMF, but it's EMF isn't all that damn safe. So
I mean, I people have heard me. I'm very, very open on many things and more conservative on others. I say PEMF, you want to be really careful in terms of how aggressive you are with it. And I think a lot of people see the power and therefore see, okay, more is better. No. Yeah. So I'd say go low and slow. Low and slow.
Yeah. The second part is, would it act the same way as TDCS/TACS?
You're asking a question about a horse race that's never been run. Line them all up and say go. It's not that easy to do. Therapeutically, somebody's going to have a device of this sort or that sort, and that'll be the tools that they can utilize. However, there's a certain commonality. If you flash pulsed EMF or pulsed AC stim or pulsed photobiomodulation, there's the tendency to create a frequency that tracks it. So 40 hertz, whether it's done with auditory stimulation, 2 different frequencies with 40 hertz as their difference put into each side, 2000 something hertz and 2040 something hertz. So there's a 40 hertz difference that you end up driving in the head. So there's a lot of ways to get that. And pulsed EMF and TDCS increases or decreases activity level. It doesn't have a specific frequency that it targets, but it does activate or inactivate the cortex. You put the cathode, the minus electrode on top of the cortex to create electropositivity in the basal membrane, and that turns off or turns down the cortical function in the area. So if you've got a beta spindle at the anterior cingulate, you can put the electrode over top of the beta spindle that's got the minus on it. Now, if you don't have somewhere that you want to activate inside the head because you're trying to get rid of a beta, you might put the other electrode on the shoulder, but you can dial up or down cortical function, and it stays in the direction you've trained it for a period of time afterwards, depending upon the intensity and the duration and how many sessions you've done. You can, a 20-minute session, you can get 5-10 minutes early on, as long as 20-30 minutes if you've done a number of sessions. But it's a temporary effect.
Now, Jay, you're in California. Dr. Marie, you're up in Canada, west coast of Canada. Dianne, you're on the East Coast. I am on the East Coast as well, in Florida. And as you can tell with my red face, I have gotten a little sun. How does sunlight play a role in mental health? I'm just kind of curious. I have a little bit more pep in my step right now ever since I got here.
Yeah.
Huge.
It's huge. You need it. You need that vitamin D.
Big D.
D.
Did you mean
big
huge?
D.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like anything else. It's a balance. And I can speak as a redhead, you know, like all my life I had to be so careful of the sun. And I don't mind sharing. At a certain point, I lost the redhead lottery. I got that damn melanoma. You know, they cut it out, whatnot. You know, years and years later, I'm A-okay. So we do know about the harmful effects. But one of the things I think that there is a bit of a contribution to depression with excessive sunscreen as well. I think we need, and I qualify because I'm not at high risk, but all of us need at least 10 minutes of direct, good sunlight somewhere on our skin a day. But maybe not the Florida sunlight, maybe the northern, well, on the snow, it's about the same intensity of sunburn, but no, we have to be reasonable about it. And all of us can talk about how we're spending just way too much time indoors. We get all of this artificial light at the wrong time of day, more or less at night. We're completely distorting our circadian rhythm. And we're not getting that nice itsy bitsy natural dose anymore. I think it's a major contributor to our depression.
Yeah. And for ADD too, not just depression.
Yeah.
You know, there's a 10% difference in the incidence of ADD in the desert Southwest, where it's down to 5 to 7%, versus some of the states that don't have much light, where it's up in 15 to 17%.
Yeah.
So, you know, getting bright light in the morning, which the photobiomodulation isn't it, but you've got to get light in to stimulate your pineal gland in the morning to set your melatonin cycle for the evening. And that form of ADD, where they have a delayed circadian rhythm and they don't fall asleep easily, and they can't wake up in the morning, and they look sleepy in school, so they look very inattentive. That subset of ADD is treated by the desert Southwest bright sun. So they have a lower incidence of ADD, ADHD as measured by the CDC, if there's any such agency left. I don't even know if they're around.
Could there also be something very, very simple about just getting out more? I mean, more of us, when it's just a little brighter, we're out a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, you know, being stuck in Chicago versus hanging at the beach in Florida, you know, it's got to perk you up a little bit right there, you know. So
it's totally different. It's more energy. You know, I don't know what part of the brain is affecting me. You know, what's going on, Jay?
It might not be the brain, Pete.
Could be.
You know, you've got an energetic being. It's not just a damn disembodied brain. So, you know, you've got to think that your energetic being is picking up energy, and that's not a bad thing. So
well, plus when you're a larger human, you pick up more energy than other people.
Okay. Now we're having fun.
So an energy sink, as it were, huh?
I think change is also just energizing, right? Getting away from your same old routine.
Yeah.
I think there's an energizing aspect to that. At least for me, there is.
Well, I don't have much of a change in scenery anymore, so I can't speak to that. You'll see me in this chair with this blanket behind me every freaking time. If you were to guess a time of day randomly and pick it, you might be right. You know. So.
All right, thank God a question. What are some of the biggest disagreements, paradigms between leading experts in neurofeedback? And what are the cruxes of these disagreements, paradigms? Oh, we got 20 minutes left.
Wow.
Well, I could take them all, but maybe I'll go last on this one.
So he says, "You guys want to do a mud fight for us here on this in the audience?" You know, that there are disagreements. I don't know that they're as big as some people might make them. Perhaps the personalities of some of the people may be fairly big, but the disagreements are really not. There's the fundamental principle of being able to train the brain is something that they all agree on. How they do it and why differs. Some do it therapeutically, some do it with consciousness or cognitive peak performance in mind. Different purposes, different intentions. But everybody out there agrees that you can train the brain and it can change and you can influence it for better or worse.
Yeah. My consistent soapbox is that people need to know what they're doing. And, we often get into the argument about the piece of equipment. And I think most of us agree that if you know what you're doing, your piece of equipment isn't as relevant per se, meaning if you know what you're doing, you can wield the tools correctly. But if you have an unsophisticated tool in unsophisticated hands or uneducated hands, then you can really do some damage. And I mean, I jump up and down yelling and screaming about that all the time. So yeah, you need somebody who knows what they're doing, and then they pick the appropriate tool for the circumstance, for the client, for the cost, all kinds of things.
You do see people in Europe that talk about slow cortical potential training that they've done since the 60s and 70s. Now you find infraslow and infralow frequencies. They're all dealing with the same very, very, very low frequencies, well below 1 cycle a second. They have different theories as to exactly what might make something work. There's some good neuroscience underlying it. Burbaumer's work from the 60s and 70s has good neuroscience, but in Otago University in New Zealand now, they're doing validation studies over training. I don't know whether they call it infraslow or infralow. I don't really care about the differences in language, and the people that have one or the other will be adamant that the one is right and the other isn't. But come on, get over yourself. It's a frequency. It's not you. So
can neurofeedback impact genetic-based disorders? To what extent can you give an example?
Well, everything is epigenetic. Go for it.
That too, that's an even easier answer. We know now that we can change gene expression through different things, but I also have had concrete examples of improvement in Prader-Willi syndrome, which it's slightly different than Down syndrome, but along those lines, it took a lot, and it was a long time of being very patient, but we changed this girl's life. We were able to have her stop bedwetting as a teen, calmed her anxiety and her central nervous system down significantly to the point that she was able to go off to school. And, that wouldn't have been expected years before they met me. And so there was significant improvement in that person's life because of neurofeedback and a lot of patience. But so I would say yes. And then epigenetics, yes.
Yeah, no, I think we're all on the same page. Turner's is another example. Like a lot of these conditions that, nope, you've got this title and you're going to have this developmental delay or not have this control. There's a lot that can be done.
It can change. Yeah.
And, genetics to behavior, there's an intermediate step called phenotypes. Something I wrote about in 2005, along with a couple of co-authors. So Joy Lunt and Jack Johnstone did the paper with me. But I had been talking about the subsets of EEG that were common failure modes before calling them endophenotype candidates when we published. So those discussions go back to the 90s when I was doing teaching back then. So, and the it's a genetically clustered group. They have the same physiological profile, and they respond to the same interventions. So independent of the behavioral diagnosis, if you're in a phenotype, you get the same treatment as the other people in the phenotype. The DSM doesn't predict what will work, and phenotypes do. So, yeah, I kind of like to go with the things that work, So
if working on
the next question,
if working on FZ does not impact the OCD behavior, and Haida, you got to be from Europe because that's I know how to spell, and that's a weird spelling. What other locations can impact the behavior?
From Europe, it could be from Canada.
Anterior cingulate FZ, it could be slow, could be alpha, could be beta. You might not be training the right thing. It might be cross-frequency coupled. You may need to do a different kind of training there. If you have OCD, it's at the anterior cingulate. Now, FZ is the cognitive division. If you go to AFZ, halfway between FZ and FPZ, you'll get the affective division of the anterior cingulate. So it might be that the OCD presentation that you've got is more affective than just cognitive, and slightly moving the placement. And again, looking at what you're training. Is it the slow pattern or the alpha pattern or the beta pattern, or a fast and slow mix, a dysrhythmia?
Yeah. Also there, I mean, are you dealing with true blue OCD, the kind that Jay was describing, or is this a behavioral manifestation of anxiety? If it's a behavioral manifestation of anxiety, then you can go back and train in the occipit. So, yeah, it depends.
Depends on a lot, yes.
Yeah.
I need to reach out to those people for sponsorship. Jay,
depends.
The depends people. Oh my gosh.
Jay, thank you for all your invaluable contribution to this field. Can you please elaborate on the connect between brainwaves, frequencies, and blood flow, specifically how this relates to optimal?
So if you look at perfusion, regardless of where, but the perfusion of the cortex, it's not blood flow, it's the ability to deliver oxygen and glucose. So perfusion is different than just flow. A dead brain can have flow, but it's not got perfusion. So what we're talking about is brain function, and perfusion is the amount of glucose and oxygen being burned, or the idling and decrease in perfusion. So if you did a graph with a partial correlation, and I don't know that I can do bad art on this, but
you can only share, I think, on this, Jay. Yeah.
If from the median level of perfusion, hyperperfusion, and hypoperfusion. If you start in the delta band, it's actually high perfusion. And you think, well, how's that? Well, you may be asleep, but your brain is still busy doing things, unless you're Michael Jackson and you did Michael Jackson sleep, and that's not the real thing, so don't do it. So if you're
drugs.
delta is the brain being busy, but without a white matter input to the cortex. So you've got sheet dipoles making delta. Anyway, as you go slightly faster, the perfusion drops precipitously at about 3 hertz. It drops into hypoperfusion up until about 11 hertz, and it transfers into a neutral positive perfusion from 11 to about 16. And at about 16 hertz, it takes off into hyperperfusion for beta and gamma. So the transition zone from about 11 to 12, a little change in frequency can drop you into hypoperfusion or into a neutral positive perfusion. Just a little bit of a change in frequency. The SMR frequency band sits in that neutral positive perfusion. It's above the mean, but it's not at 2 or 3 standard deviations. It's just the brain is humming on. It's not idled out, but it's not buzzing busy either. And the correlation across frequency allows you to make a slight adjustment in frequency of what's being trained and have a dramatic difference in what the outcome might be. At the upper end of that, at about 15, 16, a little bit faster starts to get you into this slightly increased up into the hyperperfusion. So beta training from 15 to 18 is catching that leading edge of the increased perfusion. A little bit faster is a lot more activity. A little faster than that, really a lot more. So slight changes in the beta or SMR frequency definition can get a fairly significant difference in the perfusion that's demanded by it. And again, alpha and the theta band are hypoperfusion. The delta band's hyperperfusion. So it's not the faster you are, the more perfusion. It'll be too simple and linear a model for it to be real in the brain.
Talabo, welcome back, my friend. What's the best diet to pair with neurofeedback for better results? Is the keto diet more effective than other diets when trying to boost neurofeedback outcomes? Can it enhance results?
Your depends.
Snicker bars all around.
You know what? I've heard everything. Autism is the big one here. Again, many parents swear by specific diets that make or have their children be more receptive to many things. But I'm not a huge fan of fad diets. One of the things we do notice is any diet will do something for a certain amount of time. It's a matter of whether it continues to do it. So I would say, make sure you work with somebody who really knows what they're talking about whenever you start to drastically change diet. Anybody disagree with me on that one?
The ketogenic diet is one that's commonly used in epilepsy, and it helps stabilize the brain. It works on the slow cortical potentials, actually, and it's useful in that respect. But your cardiologist is going to look at what you're eating and go, "Oh my God, too many lipids," and the ketogenic diet is not a healthy diet from a lipids perspective, but it's driving a different kind of metabolism, and you don't have to eat saturated fats to end up with a ketogenic diet. It's not all steaks. Coconut oil is a fabulous source of ketones. As you get older, your brain quits responding well to insulin, and the power goes down and down and down and down. If you don't have ketones in your metabolic support, you've lost 40% of the brain's ability to fire itself up. So you start out with only 60% of the fuel for burning glucose, and if you're not using something to make ketones, you're going to end up with hypometabolic function, and the brain won't work without good metabolism.
If you get too far into ketosis, Jay, doesn't your body start eating your own the protein in your muscles? And if that's true, your brain works on a great percentage on glucose, right? Does that screw anything up there?
Glucose is its primary source. It will burn alcohol before it will burn glucose, however. And people that have a chronic input of alcohol, their body will actually wait for the alcohol. You'll have a metabolic collapse as it's waiting for the gasoline instead of the oil that burns slow, the glucose. So, but you have to balance diets, and as was pointed out, fad diets aren't really wise. They're just a fad.
And I've learned so much over the last year of how different every person's body is. One diet is not the right fit for all of us. Everybody needs a different thing, and you have to measure. I called it ometry. I had a year of ometry. I measured my continuous glucose. I measured ketones. I watched what was happening in my body when I ate different things in order to learn what was right for me. And it was really revealing, because sometimes it's the opposite of what they say, and so I really encourage people to do that. Do the glucose monitor, find out how your body responds to things, and find that balance in the middle where you're not going too extreme in one way or another. And that will probably give you the brain the fuel you need to make those changes when you're doing neurofeedback.
Thanks for bringing that up, Dianne, because I've been reading a little bit here and there. It just makes so much sense to me that, we talk about phenotypes, we talk about genetics and epigenetics, but also, in terms of our historical origins, where on the planet our individual evolution was taking place, and what kind of diets were we exposed to, what kind of weather we were exposed to. Extreme northern peoples of North America. If you have a Mediterranean person, eat 3 pounds of seal blubber, or whale, no, it just doesn't work. So we're all, some of us are purebreds and some of us are mutts, and what works on one individual versus another. It's going to be.
And it also can change decade to decade. So we have the tools now to measure things and figure out what works for you.
Last question of the night. If one wants to make a career out of neurofeedback, what are the most needed skills, jobs, clinician, research, software, hardware, and how to get started?
If you want to just be a tech, you can get into it at a tech level. But if you want to be a therapist, you need to have a licensed therapy that you can provide. And each state has its own kinds of licenses for different kinds of therapy. Master's degree, doctorate, different levels of education are required. But I'm a tech. Santiago Brown is a glorified tech the same as I am. So you can have good success being technically excellent, but you've got to be technically excellent. You can't, it takes time to learn these things. So there are courses that can be taken, introductory courses to become certified in biofeedback and neurofeedback. BCIA used to be Biofeedback Certification Institute of America, but now it's Biofeedback Certification International Alliance. They certify people worldwide, and they've worked very hard to adapt their tests to match up with some of the neuroscience in Europe, which they did more slow cortical potential stuff, and the Australians worked well with them to set up a supervisorial board and so forth. So no matter where you are in the world, BCIA is your answer for the entry level of knowledge needed to be technically competent in something. If you are interested in being a therapist, you're going to end up having to pay attention to the area that you're a therapist in, and whether they approve of particular applications of neurofeedback or not. Not every profession ends up being very friendly, some a little bit more hostile than others. But it's at this point, it's a lot better than it has been historically. Neurology is now relatively open to neurofeedback as a treatment in epilepsy. It's published in Epilepsia, the journal that you publish epileptic findings in. We've got good efficacy studies and meta-analyses showing efficacy. So, jump in, learn about it. There's a bunch of different levels. I don't know what level you're interested in, but some of them are shorter courses than others. But it's a great learning curve. Jump on.
What does it mean to be a tech? Well, you really have to like saline paste.
I'm going to jump in here because Jay with humor talks about being a tech. Well, Jay, I would say is the guru, the extreme expert. And I think we have to really differentiate between humor and knowledge. So when we talk about a tech or a neurotech, this is an individual, essentially basic knowledge to apply electrodes, to understand how to recognize whether a signal is accurate or not, knows how to work the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So just base knowledge, and they work under, supervision of somebody else. That has nothing to do with Jay being a tech.
I was a quiet tech in a back lab for decades.
Yeah.
And I acquired a great deal of knowledge being immersed in it. And I learned from some of the people who were founders in the field of EEG. The Gibbs and Gibbs, right after Berger discovered EEG in humans, Gibbs and Gibbs found that you could see epilepsy with it. And, I learned with the Gibbs in Chicago. I moved them from their office to the brownstone. So I go back a long ways, back to when they used tubes and needles. So, it wasn't the good old days. It was the bad old days, but I was there. And you end up having enough knowledge at that point. People start to ask you questions. And if you're technically competent, they're happy to ask questions, because technical stuff is difficult for professionals that are in psychology to necessarily focus on. They didn't go into it for the tech, they want to work with the patient, but they're working with technology, and they quite often are dependent on techs to make sure that technology works. So
that's a good balance.
20 plus years in, after my brain tumor, I thought I was already dead. So when I was asked to do a talk to the doctors, my original instinct to say hell no, I said, what the hell? What are they going to do? Kill me? I'm already dead. So I started to do talks, and they haven't let me stop doing lectures ever since. They still pester me to do talks. I'm 76.
So much for being retired.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and again, tech is a tech. I mean, at our clinic, we currently have 2 technicians. One has been there, I think, 18 years, and the other 23. So there's a lot of knowledge you acquire under a title. So one thing is titling, the other is experience. And as Jay was saying, how these 2 things cross, if they do cross, if they don't cross. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Dr. Marie, what clinic is that, Dr. Marie?
Swingle Clinic in Vancouver, Canada. Yeah.
How do we get more information on this clinic, Dr. Marie?
Well, you can look us up. We have a classic website, swingleclinic.com.
But is there an app that exists in this clinic?
Yes, we have developed an app blending HRV and our trademark harmonics, and we find that when individuals use this app between their neurotherapy sessions, they move like gangbusters. Originally, we only were using the harmonics, but now that we've blended it with HRV, it's wonderful. And I'm presenting next week the data again in Brescia, Italy at BFE. So we've now done brain calm, we've done sleep for insomnia, and we're collecting all the data now on focus. So anybody who's interested, we're transparent with our data. We'll show any clinician what they want to see to back up what we say it does.
And can we see this presentation in a couple weeks on our Thursday show, Dr. Marie?
I don't know whether you can see the presentation, but I can.
No, I mean, your PowerPoint. Can you run your
PowerPoint?
Sure.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about it when I get back. I can definitely.
Perfect. Yeah. Right. Genius.
Yeah. Okay.
Dianne Kosto, I'm thinking about opening up a neurofeedback clinic. Do you know anybody who can help me figure out how to manage it?
Nice. Absolutely. We can help you. That's what we're doing. We're doing either 100% done for you services where we come in and provide the neurofeedback, or we have training courses, hardware, software, everything you need to provide neurofeedback. So,
all right, I'm sold. Where do I go?
SYMMETRY Neuro-PT.com.
Spell it, please.
SYMMETRY, SYMMETRY, NeuroNeuroPT.com.
Thank you.
Yay.
It's the spelling that got our original web name. Brain Science International. So people misspelled science.
Science, right? Yeah, SYMMETRY.
So we did Brain S International.
Nice.
But I don't even think that website's up anymore. We're not soliciting anything at all as a company. We've got customers. We'll continue to provide services, but we're definitely not looking for new customers.
Well, I know somebody who is looking for a new customer, and it's somebody that would be in Suisun City for a summit for somebody's birthday in October.
So
you're quart low. I get it, Jay.
My apologies if I'm not drinking. I'm dying, and diabetes insipidus. I dry out about as fast as I drink.
Yeah.
So the meeting in Suisun City is Suisun Summit. It's been going on for a number of years. I think maybe 8 years or something. And it's the 8th to the 11th this year. And they pop in from all over. Lisa Borloro is coming over from Italy to present a case where the family dynamics changed when they treated the epilepsy successfully of one of the children, and all the detail of the family dynamics is a family therapy thing. So that'll be presented. We've got presentations about Parkinsonism and movement disorders by Lisa Tatarin. She'll also present about AI hooking up EEG lab basically to AI. There's Savannah Markowska, anyway, hyphenated last name from Macedonia. Samoska is the last name. And she's coming over to talk about paroxysmal activity and autism and ADD. She's from the Macedonian Academy of Science and Arts. She's coming over for the talk. We've got a talk from a student in Australia using NeuroGuide and Z-score stuff. Everybody thinks, oh my God, they're going to string them up or something. No, everybody's welcome under the tent, And
then don't forget Lee Steinberg, Jay.
I'm getting there,
Okay.
We've got a whole bunch of people coming. Santiago Brand is coming. He doesn't know where he is or who he is anymore. He's traveling so much. And I told him he'll know exactly where he is when he gets back to Suisun. He's home, So, and Lee Steinberg is going to be there. And you might think, well, what the hell's a sports agent doing at a neurofeedback meeting? Well, I think he represented a whole bunch of people that got their head hit, don't you? Don't you think he's got something to say about it? And he's represented NFL #1 picks in the draft. He's represented 8 of them lately. So he's extremely successful. Jerry Maguire, the movie, he was played by Tom Cruise. You got an exciting life if Tom Cruise has to play you in a movie. So he's going to present, and I think he's got a lot to say. He'll wrap things up just before the dinner, and it's been quite a while. I think I might auction off the rights to shave off the beard this year and raise some more money for the students with that.
Great question, PNQ. Where do I find out more details about the Suisun conference? Just copy and paste that into Google, and you will get yourself directed. I don't know if they've updated the page yet, Jay, but shortly details will be coming up, right?
Yeah. And Mary Tracy's got a webmaster working on stuff. They've got a save the date going out with a early bird special, free, discounts, and all that kind of stuff will happen. But you can guarantee that the weather in Sassoon in October is idyllic, unless it's not.
I'm gonna say, careful there, Jay.
It's the fabulous weather. Occasionally we get rain, but we've had 8 years of really gorgeous every single year, having good weather. And this year I expect the same. It's about 2 city blocks away from the hotel. People walk from the hotel to the yacht club. The yacht club is.
We don't want to be driving.
Well, the yacht club does have a full service bar.
Oh yeah, they do.
And the big screen in the bar has the live stream from the conference going on in it. But if you walk in, there's the bar straight ahead, and if you take a right-hand turn, there's a large seating area where they normally put on big feeds for crab feeds and whatnot for their membership. But we just take the place over for 3 days and pay them for it, and they're happy. They get enough income to pay their taxes, so
nice.
Well,
keep them happy.
I want to thank everybody for showing up, asking questions. Our panelists, thank you for showing up. Gee, who's on the East Coast and the West Coast here?
Hey,
I'm in the dark now. I gotta go in. It's getting dark.
All right. And then if we missed anybody, we do a Thursday show. So we'll see Jay and Marie or whoever. We'll see everybody in the morning.
Are those braces on your wrist, carpal braces?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I thought you were a bowler.
We can talk about wrists sometimes.
From my wrists all the way up to my elbows.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. You have a great night. See you in the morning, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.